The three artists who were commissioned to decorate the interior of this church were Duncan Grant, Vanessa Bell, and Vanessa's son Quentin. Duncan and Vanessa were living at Charleston, which is about 3 miles away at the foot of the Downs, and they had sort of retreated to the countryside. And Bishop Bell, who commissioned the paintings, was in touch with a central body in London. Duncan would have got to hear about it, and he was probably the artist who kind of offered to take part in this venture. The bishop met with Duncan, and then they had to locate a suitable church. And Berwick was near to where they were living. They used to walk along the old coach road and go to the Cricketers Inn. He might well have been into the church. He would have known that it was in a very gentle way within what is called the Anglo-Catholic tradition. And he would have known that that meant they were open to the idea of beauty and art in a church context, like one still finds on the continent pre-Reformation Catholic churches, art which had inspired them as artists. And that was kind of the beginning of how they came to decorate this little country church.
Well, we have these paintings painted by the Bloomsbury Group in the 1940s, and it was a very experimental time in terms of wall painting techniques. They were using commercial materials, which is a bit of a problem for us because those materials, they change in composition. The three artists involved here were sort of mixing those techniques and technologies and doing different things between themselves. And that's a legacy, a technical legacy that we have to deal with because those materials can go wrong and have gone wrong. There's inherent susceptibility and weakness and decay in those materials, which makes our task quite difficult now.
The first thing that we do is we look really carefully. We don't get out our little boxes of investigative tools or any testing materials. We acquaint ourselves with the paintings and we try and look at them with a critical eye and try to forget what everybody else has told us about them. We let the paintings decide what we need to find out first.
These paintings are slowly but surely deteriorating. There's quite a lot of flaking going on. There's also a microbiological problem. It's something which is happening physically to the paintings, but it's also related to the environment. So our approach to that is a dual one. It's to look at the environmental conditions, to tackle those problems, and also to treat the paintings as best we can with the knowledge that we have now.
When you have a Heritage Lottery Fund grant, you have to engage the community. You have to share what you're doing with other people. That's kind of the condition of the money that you're given. I was appointed as the project evaluator, and every Heritage Lottery funded project has to have an evaluation which assesses all of the impacts of the project, gathers lots and lots of feedback from lots of different people, and then tries to pull that all together in one report. I've started with the people who know the church and to whom the church really matters the most, which is the congregation. and also local residents. So I have been gathering feedback about what they think of the project, which is almost overwhelmingly positive, with, of course, there's always a few caveats and a few concerns and tensions that have to be reflected. I think the feedback that's touched me most has been the feedback that has come from charitable organisations and community groups who have come and used the church for the first time. There are charities who have been supporting carers, charities who have been supporting people suffering from bereavement, supporting people with mental health considerations. And the most touching element of the work that I've been doing has been reading their feedback about what it's meant to them to come to this church as a result of the project.
I've been working with the Oasis project for a number of years, taking groups of children who are affected by substance misuse in their families out into nature and doing creative things in a group. The children that I've been working with at Oasis are from Brighton. You know, even though it's not very far away, Brighton, it's quite an urban setting, and Berwick Church has been a really successful destination for our trips, in that normally we sort of go somewhere where it's just outdoors and have an adventure. But the special thing about here was that we started at the church, and then we went and did a walk to Alceston Church, had a picnic in the churchyard, did some more storytelling, a bit of acting and music, and then walked back. They created a map on which they illustrated a lot of their experiences. So, you know, this is us walking along the path, and this is the puppy we saw, and, you know, here are the puddles and things like that. So it was a really good way of getting them to kind of reflect on their experiences of the day. They talked about it a lot afterwards, and we had feedback from parents that they absolutely loved it, you know, and the parents wanted to come, think we must go too sometime.
One of the joys of this church is that it has such a diversity and richness that you can tailor a visit to the needs of whatever group it is that's coming.
I'm quite interested in working with schools and with all sorts of groups, really, so and building up partnerships with sixth form colleges and that kind of thing. So when I retire in the summer, I'm really looking forward to getting full on in that role.
My children go to the local school, and they did a play here, which was directed by one of the villagers, and it was fabulous. And it was so nice to be able to use this beautiful church as the backdrop. My children love coming to all the little events that happen, and even my son, you know, said that he really feels a part of the village, and he likes that everyone knows him, and he's done a few readings, and it's just lovely.
It's always important to be as flexible as possible, and if the children or the visitors are particularly enjoying one aspect, to prolong that one and be a little bit more flexible. That's one of the joys of having such a small outfit with a number of volunteers to help.
As part of the whole project, we brought our students from the University of Brighton over here, from the School of Art and Media. They shot pictures, they filmed footage. When we came here, of course, they were still a bit apprehensive and unsure about what they were supposed to do in a church. But I think they were really, really touched, and they really enjoyed it.
In my time here, I've written a number of poems, and I'm trying to find sometimes stories within the painting, or my reaction to the paintings, or the way they affect other people. In the same way that you can see some of the greatest works of art in art galleries, there's nothing quite like seeing them in the place they were designed for or built for. And of course, the great thing about the paintings in Berwick Church is that they are specifically meant for this building. You see it in the arches, you see it in the placement of where they are. And in the same way that if you write poetry about this church, there's the opportunity for it to live in the same way. It makes a sense here that it wouldn't in another place. It's so much easier if you've got a painting that you're talking about behind you or hidden from you, as one of my paintings is, because it's about the arch behind me that you can't see. I read that here once. I call it The Other Side of the Arch, and it's about the wise and foolish bridesmaids. It's a story in the Bible about people who go out, some with oil to wait in case, and some who do not. And some go asleep and their oil runs out, and some have brought oil and the cry goes out, here comes the groom. And so it's a story about readiness. And the poem I'm trying to do is about what is behind the place, what brings us to a place. And I invite people to step up and own the sanctuary. I then invite them to look up. And then I finish with the call, here comes the groom.
Obviously, we talk a lot about the conservation of the paintings, but one of the things that we actually had to do was take the roof of the church off and insulate it, because obviously one of the issues that we have around the conservation is providing this constant level of humidity, and to do that, we also had to take all the flooring up, we had to remove the pews, we put the ground source heat pump in, we actually added an extension to the church, put in a toilet, we added a kitchenette, we redecorated, and the reflooring. Yes, they needed to conserve the paintings, but I think there was a much wider narrative around this project, and things like the facilities they've put in, thinking about the infrastructure, how you're going to get people into the church longer term, thinking about the accessibility. It's all these kind of things, and actually looking at the lottery project and going, well, actually, let's take this project and embed it into our longer term vision.
You could broadly say that a life of a church is, well, a church is primarily the people in the community, and then there's the fabric, the church buildings. And those two things are kind of looked after by the parochial church council, 2 church wardens with the vicar. They had to agree that this is a project that they wanted to support. The project couldn't have been done without a team of people, some of them paid, but an important core of them are volunteers.
Peter approached me after a service and said, how would you fancy being secretary to the, well, it wasn't the Conservation Trust then, how would you fancy being the secretary to this project? And I thought, oh, that's exciting, you know, that might be good fun, and I'll be able to help the community and all that sort of stuff. So I said yes, and then wondered why I'd said yes. But Peter picked me up one Sunday and we went over to somebody's house, and about half a dozen of us sat around a table and said, what are we going to call this thing? And what's the aim of it? Because primarily, obviously, it was the conservation of the paintings, but it grew quite a lot. But I understood how passionate Peter was on the outreach programs, and that is when it became even more important to me, really. And the church needed preserving, and the paintings needed preserving to be seen by as many people as possible, really.
One of the things that has impressed me most about this project is the really strong vision that Peter has always had for this project and for how the church has shared with other people. Even 4 or 5 years ago, when I look back at his early writing about what he wanted to achieve here and what has actually been achieved here, the vision has remained really constant throughout. And his vision has always been to bring together nature, spirituality and creativity, and allow other people to benefit from those things and to feel their own creativity or be inspired by the church.
I had an exhibition of paintings based on the book of Genesis, and I'd also been commissioned by Miles Jenner, the head of Harvey's Brewery in Lewes, to paint 2 scenes to go on the brewery tower, Adoration of the Kings that he puts on the tower at Advent. It's painted on great big panels, 8 foot high. And there was another of the Resurrection that he puts on in Holy Week at Easter. Peter came to see the latter paintings, so he had this sense that here I was with a certain connection to the place, who was engaged with religious subject matter, and he raised the possibility of painting something for the reredos, for the back arches, to complement David Hensel's crucifix. At first, I thought of a very kind of abstract effect of light, something in a way corresponding to the painted windows that you've got there, something very pure and simple. I kind of submitted that to the parish committee and they went, Then I thought perhaps light would be better embodied in a field of many flowers, local flowers, and of course it might tap into the locality, the fact that we're in a beautiful pastoral environment. There's a fairly consistent interest in producing deep space in my paintings. And so I got my meadow of flowers and I drove a mower through it and thought, there'll be a path in the middle. And I thought, it still doesn't quite cut it. It needs something else because there's got to be sky. So what's the sky doing? It's moving from cloud to sunlight. And there I was painting the rainbow, finishing the job in, I think, February 2020. 2 months later, there was a rainbow in every window in Britain.
There's a tension between conservation and creativity. So there was a big irony, really, in the conservation project in a way, because to introduce these contemporary works in the 1940s was potentially controversial. And there are some people who are against it. Now, that intervention meant that this church then became an important place, but then the paintings potentially then become purely a focus of conservation. So it's trying to find some kind of way of bringing those together and not allowing conservation to stamp out continuing creativity.
The Bloomsbury group was a group of friends. It was always interested in an art within which one could inhabit. To my mind, is an art that it's lived art. I mean, if one sort of visits Charleston Manor, where the Bells used to live, or indeed Virginia Woolf's house in Rodmill, Monk's house, you know, the influence of Bloomsbury art, so to speak, is quite unmistakable. And the same thing one can notice here, because it blends the sublime, the ordinary, the material, but also the decorative.
These paintings evoke lots of different responses in people. Some people like them, some people don't like them, but they're very meaningful. And I think part of the process of conservation, whatever the age of the painting, is to try to bring out that meaning, maintain that meaning, convey it, and preserve it.
It was said by somebody who visited this church once that the only language for this building, the only suitable language, is poetry.
There is something uncanny, unheimlich about this place. And this is why it's so appealing, so attractive to me, because it invites one to think, you know, this looks a bit out of place. But it's unmistakably English and, to my mind, unmistakably Sussex.
I would say that Berwick Church is a very unique place that combines nature, being on the edge of the South Downs, with the spirituality that you'd expect in a church building, and also the creativity that you see in the paintings. And I think the combination of those three things makes it an extremely special place.
The size of it, it's not too big, it doesn't sort of overwhelm you. It's a place where you can just be quiet and silent.
The connection here, that being able to see outside, being able to connect what you're seeing with the downs, with the trees, with the churchyard.
That, of course, is reflected in the paintings because there are these windows onto other places. It's about the liberation of so many senses here.
For me, it's a sum of all the parts. It's the size of the church, which is very small, and that's always very surprising to people. They expect, because of the paintings, for it to be something large. And it's not, it's tiny. And the paintings themselves are quite, well, not something you'd expect to see in a rural church. And its situation, just in the South Downs and everything put together, it becomes very special because of that.
There is a dialogue, an engagement that goes on all the time. So whoever walks in the doors of this church and encounters these paintings brings something to the artistic table, even if they say, I don't like that very much, or wow.
You have to experience this place, actually be in it, and then you know why it's special. You just get a feeling when you come into this place. It's like nowhere else you've ever been. It's so calming, it's so light, and yeah, I always feel better having been here than when I arrived.